The sky above the school was clear, with only a faint shimmer passing unnoticed through the clouds, while the children inside the classroom were busy with drawings, laughter, and curious questions. Echoing against the walls, the teacher turned her back for just a moment to write something on the board, and that was when it happened. Without a sound, without a shadow, without a warning, a pulse of light swept across the windows, and a subtle tremble ran through the ground, yet nothing broke, and no alarm was triggered. Somewhere high above Earth, hidden beyond the ordinary vision, a ship floated silent and cloaked, its design unfamiliar and too smooth for human understanding. Inside the walls of this alien vessel, creatures moved in quiet confidence. They observed the children through hovering displays, studying expressions, recording emotional responses, calculating language patterns and physical movements. They had been watching for weeks and finally decided it was time to retrieve what they called the specimens, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity, believing themselves superior and assuming humanity had no way to notice or respond. They did not understand what children meant to Earth. Inside the ship, 5 children sat huddled together, their faces pale, their eyes wide. Some cried softly, others stared in silence at the tall, thin beings with glowing eyes and smooth voices who tried to offer strange food and used translation devices to ask strange questions, but the children refused to speak or eat or move. They missed their families, their teacher, their pets, their homes. They were frightened not just by the unfamiliar faces, but by the way everything felt: too clean, too empty, too cold. No warmth, no smell of books, no creak of the wooden floor, no bell ringing for lunch, only silence and glowing walls and creatures who didn't blink back. On Earth, panic had already begun to rise. The school security systems showed a blank gap in footage where the children were last seen. Parents arrived in confusion, hoping it was just a mistake, but they found no answers, only missing backpacks, half-finished drawings left on desks, and no trace of where their sons and daughters had gone. The teachers were questioned, the grounds searched, the skies scanned, the police involved, but nothing was found. No vehicle, no noise, no witnesses, only a quiet, clear morning that had turned into a nightmare. Hours later, satellites picked up a strange distortion in the upper atmosphere, a kind of energy signature that had not been recorded before, not natural, not from Earth, and not from anything known. The data was forwarded silently to higher authorities, and then passed again to those even higher. Hidden behind many layers of secrecy, the information finally reached the Earth Defense Network, an international system created not for war, but for protection, for moments that everyone hoped would never come. And now one of those moments had arrived. Inside the network's central station, deep beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, people gathered around large screens, eyes sharp, minds focused as they replayed the energy signature again and again, tracing it backward across its path, narrowing the point of origin, calculating speed, direction, and location. They saw it appeared over the school for just a moment, then vanished upward into low orbit, where it blinked out from sensors, completely leaving behind only a flicker of distortion, as if space itself had bent and sealed shut. The director of the station stood with arms folded, expression hard, not from fear, but from purpose, her voice steady as she gave the order to initiate Level Red protocol. This was not a case of natural disaster or terrorist act. This was an external threat, unknown and possibly hostile, and 5 human children were missing, taken without warning, without communication, without consent. Above Earth, the alien ship drifted calm and untouched by the worry below. The crew believed their mission was successful. They believed they had done no harm. They believed that primitive worlds had no claim over scientific progress or ethical concern. They had visited other planets, taken other samples, learned from other species, and never faced resistance to them. Humanity was just another stop, another study, another lesser form, not yet ready for true contact, and certainly not for defense. They had no idea what they had just started. The children sat together, clutching each other's hands, whispering softly names of their parents, names of their pet songs. They had learned poems. They remembered. They didn't understand where they were or why this was happening. But one thing they knew deep inside: was that someone would come, someone would be looking, someone would never stop until they were found. They could feel it in their hearts, a warmth that the cold metal walls couldn't take from them, a kind of knowing that only humans carried. And though they were afraid, they held onto each other and waited. The alien observers took notes, ran scans, discussed among themselves what made human children so emotional, so chaotic, so hard to control. They didn't understand tears or laughter or stories. They only recorded reactions and filed data. They didn't understand why the smallest child had begun to draw shapes with his finger on the cold floor, repeating the pattern again and again, or why another kept whispering the word home with such desperate strength, as if the word itself was a shield. Back on Earth, the sun began to set, casting a red glow over the ocean's edge. But inside the defense station, there was no night, only movement and orders and calculation. Drones launched into orbit quietly. Satellites adjusted their focus. Radar systems switched to modes not used in years. Silent codes passed between military channels in dozens of languages, but all with one message: locate the source, retrieve the children by any means necessary. World did not scream it, did not shout it, did not broadcast its pain or anger, but it moved with purpose and coordination, like an ancient beast awakening from sleep, not in rage but in cold focus, because the one rule humanity had written in the core of every defense law was simple and final: do not touch the children. Now something had crossed that line, something that did not yet understand what humanity would do in return. The clock was ticking. The eyes of Earth were opening, and somewhere above the stars the first quiet breath of response had already begun to rise, not in fear, not in panic, but in preparation, because this was not just about science or study or mistake. This was about something older and deeper than any alien could measure, something called love, something called home, something worth fighting for, something that was never allowed to be taken without consequences. And the consequences were coming. The alien ship floated quietly in the dark of space, its smooth surface reflecting faint stars, like a drop of silver ink on black canvas. Inside, the atmosphere remained calm and controlled, but something had begun to shift. The children were not responding the way previous species had. Their behavior was unpredictable, their emotions too intense to classify, and their silence more unsettling than resistance. They refused the food offered, refused to sleep, refused to interact. They clung to each other, whispering in low tones that the alien translators could not follow, forming bonds that even the observers could not break or analyze. The lead scientist among the alien crew reviewed the emotional data again, measuring the heart rates, expressions, voice tones, and biological stress markers of the children. The readings were inconsistent, sometimes low, sometimes spiking without pattern. The emotional intensity did not match the physical threat level. Nothing in their databases explained it. They assumed it was a flaw in the species, something primitive, something unstable. They believed that perhaps the species had not evolved emotional regulation the way more advanced civilizations had. But they were wrong, deeply wrong. And the consequences of this misunderstanding were drawing closer with every second. Meanwhile, far below on Earth, the defense network had narrowed the energy trail, confirming without doubt that the anomaly had left the planet with unnatural propulsion and vanished into a cloaked signature in orbit. The scanners could not lock directly onto the vessel, but small background fluctuations in magnetic fields and reflected radiation betrayed its position, a pattern not caused by nature, but by artificial technology. Stealth or not, the ship was now marked in the command center. The director stood before the globe-sized interface, showing live satellite feedback. Across the planet, coded alerts were sent to all allied defense units, strategic posts, activated emergency readiness plans. Across continents, scientists, technicians, strategists, and special units, all connected by encrypted lines and focused on the finest single task of retrieval. Earth had never been fully united until now, but this act, this silent theft of their children, had moved leaders and soldiers, scholars and parents to the same voice and same cause, not with panic, but with shared resolve. The children on the ship continued resisting quietly, not with violence, but with something deeper. One of the older kids began drawing on the floor, using nothing but his fingers and memory. He started making shape symbols from school, from history, from ancient stories. Passed down from grandparents, the other children watched and slowly joined him, copying the symbols, repeating names of places and people, as if they were trying to keep their world alive inside. This cold and foreign space, they knew no one else could hear them, but they kept going, as if by doing so they were calling someone, calling home across the stars. Alien crew grew more puzzled with each hour. Their instruments failed to decode the meanings of these human actions, their language. Systems identified the words but could not understand the intention or pattern they had studied. Countless species before this mission, but never encountered a subject that would not yield to logic, fear, reward, or persuasion. Their frustration grew, but the children only became quieter, more focused, more determined, as if they knew help was already on its way on Earth. The plan was finalized not through loud declarations or open warfare, but through silence and speed. The launch was approved for a classified operation code named Project Reclaim, a retrieval strike designed for high-orbit engagement with precision, zero casualty goal, and fast extraction of hostages. The vessels selected for the mission were small, stealth-enabled, and piloted by elite units trained in zero-gravity boarding and deep space rescue. Their objective was not to start war, but to bring the children home and deliver a warning strong enough that no other species would ever try such a thing again. As the strike ships launched silently from their hidden base beneath the ice sheets of Antarctica, no news broadcast followed, no public statement was made, only a quiet shift in the winds of the world. Those with access to classified networks knew what was coming, and those who did not only felt that something had changed, a ripple passing through the fabric of global systems, a signal that Earth was no longer watching the stars with wonder alone, but now with defense and fire behind its gaze. The ships broke atmosphere with no trails, no sonic booms, using magnetic glide systems and frictionless acceleration to avoid detection. The cloaking fields of the alien vessel were advanced but not flawless, and Earth's adaptive targeting had found the blind spot. The ships reached orbit within minutes, splitting into formation, approaching the vessel with angles calculated down to the millisecond. They carried no traditional weapons, but tools that could disable power, disrupt shields, and breach hulls. Without fire, a form of warfare built not to destroy, but to reclaim. Inside the alien vessel, alarms began to blink. Not loud, but sharp enough to alert the crew that something had changed. Energy fields flickered slightly, gravity adjusted without command. Lights dimmed for a moment, and the ship's navigation system reset on its own. The lead scientists turned toward the main observation dome and saw a shape appearing from the blackness outside, not large, not threatening by design, but far too close. Far too precise and moving in ways that no previously recorded species had shown. The children felt it too, not with their eyes or ears, but something inside them, something that told them the waiting was over. The smallest girl stood up slowly, her eyes still wide, but now filled with something else, something that looked like hope. She pointed toward the wall as if she could see through it, and whispered a single word that no alien translator could fully decode, but the meaning was clear to all the other children. She said, "Home." In that moment, the ship shook slightly. A soft pulse passed through the halls like a wave of wind through still air, and the lights turned from blue to red as emergency protocols activated. The alien crew scrambled to react, but the system was no longer responding to their full commands. The Earth team had breached the outer layer and was inside, moving fast, disabling defenses, opening pathways, sealing escape routes. They did not fire, they did not speak, they moved with precision, knowing exactly where the children were and exactly how much time they had. Alien observers panicked, not from fear of violence, but from the realization their assumptions had been wrong, completely wrong. This species was not primitive, not passive, and certainly not unconnected. What they had taken as weakness was something else entirely, something dangerous, something sacred. The bond between parent and child, the instinct to protect, the fire that burned quiet until provoked, and now they had provoked it in the worst way possible, and Earth had come to answer. Ship began to lose control, and the only thought that filled the minds of those who had once felt so confident in their superiority was this one. Unspoken truth: they had touched the wrong children, and now they would learn what it meant to face a species that fought not for conquest, not for pride, not for territory, but for love. And love was coming like fire through the dark, the halls of the halls of the hulls. Alien ship, once filled with quiet calculation, were now filled with an unfamiliar energy, a rising tension that none of the crew could control their systems. Flickered lights, dimmed doors failed to lock, and screens scrambled into static their confidence. From before slowly dissolved into confusion and unease. Something was inside their vessel. Something that moved too quickly, too silently, too precisely for them to understand, and worse still, they had no idea how it got there. The children sat close together, feeling the shift in the air. Though they could not see what was coming, they felt it in the way. The floor trembled slightly in the way the alien observers now avoided looking at them in the way. The lights began to turn a soft red. The smallest boy, who had been drawing symbols on the floor earlier, stood up slowly and reached for the others. Without speaking, he held their hands, and they followed him to the far corner of the chamber, as if instinct told them it was time to be ready in. The shadows of the ship, 3 human operatives moved without sound. Their suits blended perfectly with the alien interior, their steps calculated, their breathing controlled. Each one carried tools, not guns, not explosives, but compact, silent disruptors and layered defense fields. They were not here to destroy this place, they were here to take back what was stolen. They had trained for years in zero-gravity combat in alien environments, and fast entry and faster exit, and now that training met its moment. With every breath and every movement focused toward the same goal, the lead operative signaled to the others. They split down a corridor that curved unnaturally like liquid metal, shaped into foam walls pulsing faintly with energy. They reached the holding chamber, quietly watching through the translucent panel, where the children were kept, and in that moment, something inside them shifted from mission focus to something deeper, something that tightened in the chest and pulled at the throat. Seeing the small group of children, frightened, huddled, tired, but still strong, still waiting, still believing, one of the children looked up directly toward the panel, though he could not see through it, but he stared anyway as if he knew, and then a faint smile appeared on his face, not wide, not loud, just a soft signal of understanding, the kind that only humans could share. And in that moment, the lead operative raised his tool to the panel, activated a silent pulse, and the door unlocked without a sound. The children turned as the door slid open, and a figure stepped inside, and like the ones who had captured them, this figure moved with a purpose that felt warm and real, not like the cold curiosity of the aliens. The children did not run or scream, they simply walked forward as if their feet already knew the path. The operative knelt and held out both arms, and the children rushed into them. No words needed, only contact, only confirmation that they were not alone anymore. Outside the chamber, alarms blared louder. The alien crew scattered, trying to reroute systems, trying to block internal access, trying to understand what had entered their ship and why it could not be stopped. They used translation systems to send signals of warning. But the language of warning had no meaning now, because this was not negotiation. This was not misunderstanding anymore. This was correction. This was consequence. This was the moment when they would understand what it meant to harm something Earth held sacred. The retrieval team moved quickly back through the hallways, their route already mapped, their exits already timed. Drones moved ahead, disabling sensors, rerouting gravity fields, and making sure no harm could come to the children from failing systems or desperate actions. The alien crew watched from a distance, frozen, not by weapons but by something far heavier. The realization that they had touched something they never should have touched, not a resource, not a creature, not a piece of unknown biology, but something protected, something irreplaceable back on Earth. Signals confirmed the mission had succeeded. The children were alive, located, and now being extracted. No damage had been done to the vessel beyond its systems, and no lives had been taken. But the message had been sent louder than any weapon could shout. Earth had entered and taken what belonged to it. Without permission, without apology, and without failure, the planet was no longer a silent observer in the galaxy. It had shown its edge, not of steel, but of spirit, as the extraction ship left the alien vessel, moving swift and silent through orbit. The crew of the alien ship stood in silence. No one spoke, no one chased, no one even moved, because deep in their minds, something had broken. The belief that their way was always right. The belief that curiosity could come without cost, and now they would carry this lesson back to their own stars, to their leaders, to their people. A warning that would echo far beyond Earth. Inside the extraction ship, the children sat wrapped in thermal blankets, offered soft food held gently by calm voices and warm hands. But none of them cried, none of them shouted. They simply looked at the stars outside the small windows and watched Earth grow larger in the distance, a place that had never looked so beautiful, so real, so full of meaning. They had seen fear. They had seen confusion, but now they saw the truth of what it meant to be protected, to be valued beyond measure. One child looked toward the lead operative and asked a single question in a soft, tired voice. "Did you come just for us?" And the answer came not with words, but with the way the operative nodded slowly, eyes steady, voice low and full of quiet truth. "Yes, only for youth." Ship entered Earth's upper atmosphere, wrapped in protective fields, surrounded by escort drones ready to defend if needed. But no threat followed, no weapon chased, only silence behind them and a pound voix. Fire ahead, of fire not of destruction, but of human resolve, burning brighter than any star, not fueled by hate or power, but by love, the kind of love that crossed galaxies without hesitation. When its children cried out in the dark, and as the ship descended, the planet waited, not just the families, not just the officials, but the people, the whole world, listening to the silence that had grown in the night, now waiting to hear that it was over, that their own were safe, and soon the news would come, not shouted, not dressed in drama, but spoken with the calm that follows a storm. "They are safe, they are coming home." Children touched the glass, watching clouds pass below them. One of them reached up and placed a hand on the window, fingers wide as if trying to hold the sky itself. And in that small moment, the whole mission found its meaning, not in systems or protocols or gear, but in that touch, that gesture, that connection between child and home, between loss and recovery, between Earth and the stars. And somewhere far away, deep in space, the alien ship drifted quietly, now marked not by damage, but by memory, because from that day on, every species who heard the story would remember the name of the blue planet, not because of its weapons or ships, but because of what it did when someone touched what should never be touched. They would remember Earth as the world that strikes back, not for power, not for revenge, but for its children. Children had returned to Earth, but the silence that followed was not peace. It was the stillness before the ripple moved outward. The world had seen the act, had watched its children vanish, and then witnessed their return, through the hands of a response that no longer asked for permission. The rescue mission had not just brought them home. It had marked the beginning of something far greater than a single act. It had pulled back the curtain on a universe that had stayed hidden, and it had shown that Earth was no longer the quiet planet on the edge of the stars. It had become something else entirely. Images of the children stepping off the extraction ship spread like light through shadow. No speeches were made, no media allowed close, but the footage moved because nothing could stop it. The children walking, wrapped in thermal silver, faces tired but calm, surrounded by silent figures in armored suits and a small flag on one sleeve, showing the Earth, not a single country or alliance, but the whole planet in one simple shape. People across the globe watched, not knowing what to say, feeling a kind of pride, mixed with fire, mixed with something they had never felt before, something close to awakening. The alien species, responsible, remained in orbit, unmoving, their vessel now cut off from all systems, left without power, navigation, or defense, but untouched. No missiles, no destruction, no retaliation had followed, only silence, only the loss of control. only the feeling that something had changed forever. Their crew sat inside, unable to leave, unable to send calls for support, their leaders far away, unsure whether to approach or remain silent. The galaxy was watching, listening, waiting to see what Earth would do next, because now it was clear that this world, this humanity, would not stay silent anymore. Within days, transmissions began to move across deep space channels from other civilizations, some offering apologies, others expressing surprise, some even attempting to reach out in quiet alliance. For the first time, the galactic community realized they had not been watching a primitive world, but a sleeping one, and now it was awake, and it had teeth, sharp, silent, fast, and powered. Not by conquest, but by protection, the kind of strength that did not ask for war but would not back down from it, either. In one of the neutral systems, a meeting was called, a gathering of species that had once labeled Earth as low threat, low tech, low priority, and now every voice carried uncertainty, because if humanity could reach an orbiting vessel in moments, if they could retrieve their own without warning or loss, and if they could do it without seeking war, then what else were they capable of? The very idea that they had done it without weapons, without killing, changed everything. It showed restraint, control, intention, and above all, a message: do not cross the line. Back on Earth, the children were taken to a recovery facility, not a hospital, but a place designed for peace, warmth, care, and rest. The rooms filled with colors, soft lights, familiar sounds, stories read by calm voices, music played in the background, animals brought in to visit, every detail designed to remind them of life before the fear. None of the children spoke much at first, but they smiled when their families came. They held hands, they played again. Slowly they drew with crayons, not symbols anymore, but trees, stars, homes, and figures holding hands under skies. One child sat with a counselor and drew the alien ship, but this time drew something. Beside it, a small figure with dark suit and a hand held out to the children. The child wrote only one word under the drawing, protector, and folded the paper, quietly placing it on the table, as if to say everything that needed saying in that single act. In orbit, the alien crew was finally contacted, not by threats, not by demands, but by a single statement delivered through a tight beam signal. Earth has retrieved its children. Your vessel will remain in our control until full understanding is reached. Your species is expected to communicate an explanation and decision. If no further action is taken, Earth will consider this matter resolved, but monitored. Your people are now known. We are aware of you. We are watching, and should another incident occur, you will not be warned twice. The alien response came slow, hesitant, full of broken phrases through translation systems, claiming misunderstanding, claiming no harm was intended, explaining that children were believed to be unclaimed life forms without sentient recognition, and that the act was part of a research mission. Nothing personal, nothing aggressive, nothing cruel, only academic. But Earth did not accept excuses. It accepted responsibility and consequences, and the message sent back was clear: intention does not erase impact, and ignorance does not excuse violation. If your kind cannot tell the difference between specimen and soul, then your kind must stay far from this planet. Earth is not your experiment, and its children are not your data. Across the stars, new warnings were placed near Earth's position, not by humans, but by others who had watched and now understood. Small beacons, flashing silent signals translated into every known tongue: leave Earth be, protect its borders, respect its kind, or face what follows. Humanity began to prepare, not for invasion, but for presence. New systems were built, orbital monitors, improved defenses layered across global space stations, expanded, but not to strike out, rather to make sure this never happened again, to make it known that while Earth still welcomed peace, it no longer relied on the mercy of unknown skies. It would write its own laws among the stars, laws forged from pain, love, and unwavering resolve. The children grew stronger day by day. They laughed again. They played in gardens. They built small models of ships and stars. Some of them said they wanted to be pilots, others said artists, but all of them now carried a light in their eyes that had not been there before, the light of those who had seen something others had not, and survived and come home. A monument was commissioned, not a statue of soldiers or ships, but of a child reaching toward the stars, not in fear, but in hope, the base of the statue carved. With the words, "We do not reach for war, we reach for our own, and we never let go." When the monument was unveiled, families stood together, hands held, strangers hugged, veterans wept, children placed flowers at the base, and for the first time in a long time the world breathed together, not in fear, not in anger, but in shared memory and quiet promise. The galaxy learned a truth it would not forget. Earth had not attacked, Earth had reclaimed, Earth had not destroyed, Earth had defended, and it had done so with the speed of lightning, the silence of shadow, and the strength of love. And now that truth echoed through the systems like a song, soft but sharp, a warning and a reminder: touch what is ours, and we will come, not to conquer, not to burn, not to dominate, but to take back what belongs to us, because we are human, and we protect our own, no matter the cost, no matter the distance, no matter the stars. And that is how Earth changed from myth to message, from unknown to unforgettable, not through war, but through the strength of heart, sharpened by the fire of what had almost been lost. The sun rose slowly over the eastern horizon, casting golden light across the surface of Earth. Where the world moved on the surface as it always had, traffic rolled through city streets. Families gathered in parks, students returned to schools. Yet something beneath all the normal routines had changed. Something invisible but powerful had settled into the spirit of humanity. A new sense of awareness had taken root deep inside the global soul. Children had returned, but they were not the same, not broken, not damaged, but changed. Each of them carried something that could not be explained in reports or files. They had been beyond the sky, had seen faces not of this world, had felt fear that reached beyond nightmares, and had been brought back not by luck or mercy, but by hands that refused to leave them behind. One of the children now spoke softly in class. When asked about the missing days, he simply said, "We waited, and they came for us, because that is what people do when they love you. They come." The teacher said nothing more after that. They let him draw what he wanted, let the others tell stories with shapes and colors and strange designs that no one truly understood, but always listened to, because somehow it felt important. The way they spoke, not in detail, but with feeling. The way they remembered not places or pain, but the moment they saw home again from above, blue and warm and real. And there's in the halls of leadership there was little celebration, only reflection. Quiet meetings among nations once divided, now sharing data and intelligence. Defense systems fused and upgraded, joint orbital missions approved with no flags, no borders, only one symbol, that of Earth, not just as land or country, but as protector, as one voice. When the time came to answer the universe, the alien species who had taken the children sent messages of formal apology, long documents, translated and retranslated, filled with reasons and culture and confusion, but none of it changed the truth, none of it erased the act. And so Earth responded not with rage, but with finality. Your apology is noted, your actions are recorded, your presence is no longer welcome near our world, your kind is not to approach our orbit, your vessels will be watched, your technology studied from afar. You may remain, but not near and not trusted, because forgiveness is human, but memory is stronger. And Earth remembers. No war followed, no attacks, no retaliation, because the message had already been delivered. In the silence of the rescue, in the precision of the response, in the calm return of the children, the galaxy understood Earth had limits that must not be crossed, and while its people laughed and danced and built and dreamed, they were not without line, and once that line was passed, they would rise as one, not in hate but in unshakable love, and defend what mattered most. Far beyond the moon, a station was built, not military, not political, but a symbol, a place of watch and warning. Shaped like a ring around a central spire made of light metal and crystal, it floated quietly in space, always turning slowly, its panels marked with names not of countries, but of children, names etched with care, and beside each one a single sentence: "We are kind until you touch what is ours." Visitors from other species who were permitted to see the station did not speak loudly within its walls. They moved with respect, some leaving gifts or symbols of peace, others leaving only silence, but all of Them left with the same understanding. Earth was awake, Earth was aware, Earth was ready not to conquer, but to protect, and that made them stronger than any fleet or weapon. One of the children, who had been rescued, stood at the base of the spire during the unveiling ceremony. Years had passed, but he still remembered the walls of the ship, the cold air, the faces that watched without blinking, but more than that, he remembered the hand that reached for him through the door, the voice that said, "Come on, let's go," and the sound of the engines as they flew home. He touched the metal and said nothing for a long time. Then he looked up toward the stars and whispered thank you and walked away, not needing to stay, not needing to explain. He had already spoken in the way only survivors do, through silence and movement and life. The operatives who had carried out the mission disappeared back into their shadows. They were not seen in parades or shown in interviews. Their names remained sealed there. Roles hidden not for secrecy but for peace. Because they did not act for fame or reward, they acted for the children and for Earth, and they knew that was enough. In classrooms across the world, students now studied not just science or language or history, but the moment humanity stood up not with weapons, but with unity, and made its place known among the stars. Stories were told not of battles, but of choices. The choice to rescue, the choice to speak, the choice to not fire when fire was easy, but instead to say, "We are here, and we are watching." The children grew up. Some became artists, some scientists. Some chose quiet lives away from cities, but all of them carried within them a memory that never faded, a reminder of what had been taken and then returned, of what it meant to be protected by something larger than any single person, the strength of an entire world rising for them. And the galaxy changed slowly. Other species reviewed their codes, studied human behavior, adjusted their policies when exploring new worlds. They taught their young about Earth, not with warnings of war, but with lessons of care, that humanity would welcome you, feed you, help you, even save you. But if you take from them, if you hurt their children, then you will not face a fleet. You will face something far stronger. You will face a planet united by purpose. And so the title of protector became part of Earth's name, spoken not by themselves, but by others, whispered in languages shaped by light and breath and thought. They are the protectors. They are the fire beneath the soil. They are the storm behind the silence. They are the shield over the innocent, and they never forget. The story ended not with a final scene, but with a feeling, the quiet strength that grows not from power but from love, the simple truth that in a galaxy full of stars and shadows, the greatest light still comes from a world that will always rise for its own. And when the stars look down upon Earth, they see not just life but promise, not just people but guardians, not just a planet but a home that stands unshaken when the line is crossed, because the message remains clear, eternal, and final. We are kind until you touch what is ours. The end.